Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Wyrock, and today's episode, we're asking the question, has gambling ruined sports? So this is prompted by an article I read recently in The Atlantic looking at what baseball is dealing with in the arena of gambling. And if you're a Cleveland Guardians fan like I am, you know this story all too well. That's because two pitchers for the Guardians, Clase and Ortiz, were recently rolled up in a federal indictment alleging that they were rigging specific pitches for gamblers, despite the fact that Clase, for example, was making $4.5 million a year. He was intentionally throwing balls and strikes at different times to influence the outcome of what's called a prop bet. You might think about gambling as, I think the Guardians are going to win or they're going to lose. They're going to win by this much, lose by that much. But prop bets are much more specific, like how many hits is a particular player going to get? Or in this case, how many strikes or balls, or even in this at bat, is the next pitch going to be a strike or a ball? Which means that the players on the field, if they know about the bets and are so inclined, can pretty easily manipulate the outcome. And as a result, if they work with gamblers, can make themselves and the gamblers a lot of money, quote unquote, unfairly. And I just say quote unquote because the whole premise of fairness in gambling is a little bit of a myth. After all, these companies that build massive wealth off of gambling are building their wealth off of figuring out how to cheat you or take your money from you. The odds, the bets, they're all calculated to the nth degree to make sure that you lose. As anyone who's been to Vegas can tell you, that even the table games themselves are rigged in such a way that the odds that you keep winning are very small. I use the word fairness in quotes because these companies, at the end of the day, are parasites. They do not provide anything. They seek to take all your money until you have none left, and at the end of their ad, they'll run a 1-800 number you can call for when you're bankrupt because of them. Look, gambling is a huge problem in our culture, and our culture has lost its moral compass with the legalization of marijuana or the legalization of gambling. This idea that people should be able to decide for themselves. Well, of course, that sounds great until massive amounts of people choose things that are unwise and unhealthy, and then the bill as a culture comes due. In this case, bringing to mind whether or not you can trust what's happening in Major League Baseball or the NBA or the NFL, all of which who have had major gambling controversies. So how should we think about this as Christians? Well, let's start here. 1 Timothy 6:10 famously says, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Look, a culture built on greed is a culture in which people will run as far and as fast as they can to whatever will benefit them financially. Clase, Ortiz, other people in other sports, they are simply reflections of our own cultural soul. We believe the lie that more money will make us happy, more money will provide us rich and rewarding lives. As long as we believe that lie, we will end up tipping pitches, cheating on our taxes, cutting corners in any way that we can, justified by our greed. So the first thing Christians must do before we point the finger at baseball or football or basketball at Clase or Ortiz is point the finger at my own heart. Am I caught up in this cycle of greed? Because if I am, here's my second point, it might lead me to gambling, and gambling harms families. Listen, Proverbs 13:11 says, wealth gained hastily will dwindle. There's a lot of professional athletes who make a lot of money very quickly end up broke. That's because there's something to be said for work ethic. There's something to be said for building. When we come into money quickly, it is very rarely for our good. So even that big payday you're chasing when you gamble, thinking if I hit this trifecta, look what I'm going to have. What you get might not even ultimately be for your good. Go read about lottery winners, for example, and how often their lives are not actually blessed. The third thing here is this: sports have always been an idol. in American culture. I mean, I'm a sports fan. I've had to wrestle with that at times. But gambling is taking it to the 10th power. Romans 1:25 warns us that when a culture exchanges the truth about God for a lie, it is on a rapid descent into a hellish kind of living. We're so caught up in sports and greed that when you put the two together, we are destroying our families. Listen, any therapist or self-help article or call-in show will tell you that the number one addiction call they are getting, after it used to be pornography, now it is gambling. There's a good chance, especially if you have a relationship with young men in that 18 to 35 age bracket, that they themselves have lost more money than they care to admit to gambling. It is actually hurting people. And this is where the church has got to do better. Matthew 5:14, Jesus tells us, you are the light of the world. Don't hide that light under the basket. We've got to be talking about greed. We've got to be talking about idolatry. We've got to be telling people that life is about more than money, that there is no shortcut to a genuine life of flourishing. You have to put in the work. And we got to tell that message to ourselves, to our children, in our churches, and in the larger world. Listen, if you're listening to this episode and man, I have lost more money on gambling than I really should have, get help. Raise your hand and say, I have a problem before it is too late. And if this ever comes back on the ballot and you're saying, should this be legal? Should this be illegal? Listen, if something hurts people, then it isn't good, right? And gambling is destroying lives. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. If you enjoyed it, please help us get the word out by sharing it with someone you think might benefit from it. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get further content, or even download the CCC app, where you'll find even more resources to help you grow in your faith and relationship with Jesus Christ.